State of California, for the County of San Diego, Central Division, case number 372018 00001881 CUOE-CTL. This deposition is being held at 2155 First Avenue, San Diego, California, 92101. Today's date is October 9th, 2018. The time on the record is 10:09 a.m. My name is Timothy Hunter. I'm your legal videographer. Our court reporter today is Greta Yang. Counsel, would you please introduce yourselves as whom you represent for the record?
Kristen Kameen for the defendants.
Josh Gruenberg for the plaintiff.
Zach Tyson also for the plaintiff.
Arthur Botham also for the plaintiff.
Madam Reporter, would you please swear the opponent to start the deposition?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely, yes.
Good morning, Ms. Hoskins.
Good morning.
Have you ever had your deposition taken before?
No.
All right. The oath that the court reporter provided to you is the same oath that you would be under if you testified in court. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And it carries with it the same penalty of perjury. Do you understand that?
Yes.
What that means is if I ask you a question today that you don't answer truthfully, you could be subjected to the laws that pertain to the crime of perjury. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Just as you would be if you testified in court. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. From time to time, I may ask you a question that you don't have an exact answer to. I'm entitled to your best estimate today. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Do you understand the difference between a guess and an estimate?
Yes.
Okay. At some later point, you'll have an opportunity to read through the deposition transcript that the court reporter is creating, and the legal process allows you the right to go through your testimony and to actually make changes to it. Do you understand that?
Yes.
I'm going to caution you now that should you choose to make changes to the transcript at a later point, that may reflect poorly upon your credibility in the eyes of the trier of fact. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And that's especially true if you make a change to a pertinent or a material section in your deposition. Okay?
Yes.
All right. From time to time, your lawyer may object today to my questions, and she's doing that to preserve her ability to make the same objections at trial to the same questions. Unless she instructs you not to answer the question, go ahead and let her make her objection, but then go ahead and answer my question, okay?
Yes.
If she does instruct you not to answer, you'll have the right not to answer the question, okay? We may disagree about whether it's an appropriate objection, but I would probably expect you to follow her advice, okay?
Yes.
All right. Are you employed at this time?
Yes.
Who is your employer?
American Retail Services.
And what is American Retail Services?
It is a company that owns and operates convenience stores in 9 states, and they're also developing a delivery app.
Okay. And how long have you worked for American Retail Services?
Since October of 2006.
Okay. And what is your title today?
I am manager of Roo, which is the delivery app that we are developing.
And what is it? It's
Roo, R-O-O.
what does that stand for?
It really doesn't stand for anything. It's based on a kangaroo. The idea behind it is a kangaroo with a pouch.
Hopping around.
Yes.
Okay. And what is it that the delivery app is going to deliver or allow people to order or deliver?
Items from the convenience stores,
Like what?
like beer, cigarettes, alcohol, anything that we sell in the stores, candy, chips,
Huh. And how would it be delivered?
by a vehicle. They would order through the app and the delivery would be made in a vehicle.
Okay. If Mr. Libas were here today, would you recognize him?
Absolutely.
How many times do you think you met him in person?
Many.
Over 100?
Yes.
Okay. And did you also have an opportunity from time to time to talk to him on the phone?
Yes.
How many times do you think you spoke with him on the phone? Let's try it this way. Over 100?
Over 100.
Okay. So too many to count.
Yes.
Did you speak with him on the phone routinely?
Yes.
What year did you begin working for MyObC or American Retail Services?
I began in October of 2006 in Oregon,
Okay.
and that was Fresno. And then I moved to California in April of 2012, and that's when I began to work for ARS West.
Do you do any work for MyOpC?
I did.
When did you perform work for MyOpC?
When there was a district manager who was replaced or they quit, I would cover that area. And I also oversaw the district manager for about a year and a half that covered the MyOpC stores.
Okay. Did you have more than one employer or just one employer since 2006?
I worked for different divisions under American Retail Services.
All right, and one of those divisions was MyOpC.
Yes,
And so when you spoke with Mr. Libas on the phone, you were working for American Retail Services, correct?
correct.
And the same is true when you met him in person.
Yes,
And you were speaking with him and meeting with him as part of your job duties and responsibilities with American Retail Services, true?
yes.
All right. And were you his manager at some point?
I was his district manager from April of 2012 until November of 2016.
Okay. And when you say you were his district manager, what district did you manage?
ARS West.
And is that outlined geographically?
Technically, no, it's not outlined geographically.
What is the region? What does that include?
Stores in northern San Diego County, and then it would work its way down to San Diego area. And then the 2 stores in Arizona were also added to my district.
How many stores in total did you have?
I started with 13, and before we started giving them back to Endeavor, I had 17 stores.
All right. So as the district manager, you managed anywhere from 13 to 17 stores?
Yes.
Okay. Who is the owner of MyOpC?
Howard Bodie and Ron Myro.
And did you report to them?
When I came to San Diego, at first I reported to Howard, and then they placed a director of operations, Cheryl Harden. And that was approximately 2015. She became my supervisor.
All right. And was it your job to report material events or communications that you had with subordinates to your managers?
If it was something that I thought she needed to know, yes.
All right. So certainly, if you had employees objecting to California labor laws that you knew existed, you would elevate those complaints, correct?
Yes, correct.
In other words, if someone said, I'm not being paid overtime, you would elevate that issue, correct?
Yes, correct.
That would be your practice.
Correct.
And you would elevate that to Cheryl Harden, your manager, correct?
Correct.
And or Myrell and Bodie, correct?
I would go through Cheryl.
Okay. But before you reported to Cheryl, when you just reported to Myrell and Bodie, you would elevate the issues to them.
To Howard. Howard was my direct supervisor.
All right. Thank you. And he's one of the owners.
Yes.
All right. Now, you indicated that American Retail Services and its subsidiaries manage convenience stores, correct?
Correct.
Do they also manage gas stations?
That is part of the convenience store. Yes.
Okay. So when you refer to it as a convenience store, it's really a gas station / convenience store, true?
Correct.
Do all of the convenience stores attach to a gas station?
There's one in San Diego that is just a convenience store.
And where is that?
It is on San Diego State campus.
Okay. Are there some gas stations that don't have convenience stores?
They all have small, if they don't have the normal size convenience store, they have small buildings that sell product out of them.
On average, what's more profitable for the business, the gas station business or the convenience store business?
The convenience store.
Like twice as valuable, twice as profitable, or
Objection.
Just a little bit more.
Speculation. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I would say probably twice.
so if the store makes $100, the convenience store might make 75% and the gas station 25%?
That sounds about right. I'm not, with this situation in San Diego, we didn't have access to what the fuel cost because that's provided by Endeavor. So I can't give you a definite answer on that.
And what is Endeavor?
It is the company that owns the fuel delivery service and the fuel that is delivered to many of the locations in San Diego.
And who owns Endeavor?
Endeavor is now owned by Marathon.
What is Marathon?
Marathon is a fuel and refining company.
Did you say Endeavor is owned by Marathon?
Now, yes.
Okay. Do the owners of American Retail Services, Myrel or Bodie, do they own any of the gas delivery services
Not in San Diego.
elsewhere?
Yes.
Which ones?
In Washington and Oregon.
And what's the name of that company?
That would be ARS Fresno.
Do you know why it's called ARS Fresno?
It all generated from the original stores that were acquired in Fresno, Arizona when the company first started.
What year was that?
1999 or 2000?
Do you have any plans to leave ARS?
In the future, yes.
What is it that you want to do?
With this delivery service, my resume has been substantially enhanced, so I would like to do something in that industry or field, whatever you would like to call it.
Okay, with apps?
Yes.
Did Mr. Olivas ever indicate to you that he was working more than 6 days in a row?
He was, yes, when he wouldn't have a district or an assistant manager.
How many times do you think he indicated to you in any fashion that he was working more than 6 days in a row?
Maybe once or twice.
Okay. You deny it was more than that?
No. Well, when he had his assistant.
At any time, ma'am.
At any
time. How many times do you think he indicated to you?
Once or twice.
Let me get my question out, because I want it to be very clear, because this is important. Because he's saying it was not once or twice, okay? That's going to be his testimony. How many times did Mr. Olivas indicate to you in any fashion, either in passing or a complaint or in any fashion, that he had worked more than 6 days in a row?
Once or twice.
Okay. When was the last time?
When he lost his assistant manager during the summer of 2016, I want to say.
When was the first time he mentioned to you that he was working more than 6 days in a row?
In that same time frame.
All right. Did he ever complain to you that he was working more than 6 days in a row?
Just once that I remember.
When was that?
That time frame.
What was
Summer
your
of
response?
2000. I told him that he could take Sundays off.
Did you ever tell him that he could not take Sundays off?
No.
Do you deny that you did not tell him that he could take Sundays off?
No.
Objection, vague. There's a double negative in there.
Did you ever tell him he had to work more than 6 days in a row because the company was short-handed or short-staffed?
No.
Do you deny that?
No.
Thank you. You just don't remember, correct?
Sorry, can you repeat the two questions?
Do you deny telling him that he could not take off time such that he had to work more than 6 days in a row?
No.
Thank you. How many times do you believe Mr. Olivas worked more than 6 days in a row?
From what I recall, it was the only when he didn't have an assistant manager or the assistant was on vacation.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you. So the question was, how many times do you believe Mr. Olivas worked more than 6 days in a row?
I remember the summer being like a month without an assistant.
Do you believe he worked every day over the course of that month?
Yes, by choice.
And do you have any evidence that that was his choice?
It would have been a verbal conversation, so there's no written evidence.
Uh-huh. Did you ever communicate with Mr. Libas via email?
Yes.
You communicated with him via email frequently, correct?
Yes.
You have access to email at all times, true?
Correct.
You have a PDA or a phone with email on it,
Yes.
so you're able to check your email when you wake up in the morning, like a lot of people do, correct?
Correct.
And before you go to sleep,
Correct.
like a lot of people do, correct?
Correct.
And throughout the day, correct?
Correct.
And you work out of an office, correct?
Objection vague as to time. Do you mean currently she works out of an office or when she was working with Mr. Libas?
When you were working with Mr. Libas, you worked out of an office?
I had a spot in our office at the corporate office, but 95% of what I did was on the road.
All right. And when you were on the road, did you use a laptop or did you use your phone for email?
Phone.
Okay. Did you have a laptop?
I did.
And would you sometimes go camp out at a Starbucks and use
Never.
Where would you use your laptop?
If I needed to use my laptop, it would have been in a store or at home.
So when you were on the road, you would be traveling from one store to the other,
Correct.
okay? And the stores have an office, correct?
Yes.
So would you go camp out with your laptop in the office typically?
If I needed to use a computer, it would be on the store's computer, typically.
Okay, so the stores had a computer, a desktop or a laptop that you could log into and use as your own
Yes.
and check your email?
Correct.
All right. Would you agree with me that there were certain topics with regard to store policies and procedures that were so important that the communication was in writing?
Yes.
Okay. When you found out that Mr. Olivas was working 30 days in a row, did you put any memorialization that that was his choice in writing?
Objection misstates her testimony.
I don't recall.
Did you know at the time when he was working more than 30 days in a row that that could be a violation of California labor law?
Objection misstates her testimony and calls for a legal conclusion.
No.
Thank you. If you did know that that was a violation of California labor law at the time, would you have written him an email to say, hey, just so we're clear, we understand that you're working more than 30 days in a row, and you're doing this by your choice?
Yes.
Objection
Thank
misstates her testimony.
Because you understand that if someone is working more than 30 days in a row, they are waiving their rights under California law, correct?
Objection calls for a legal conclusion.
I understand that now.
All right. When did you learn that?
When they changed the managers to hourly,
And was that when my colleagues and I sent the letter to the company?
I have no idea. I don't see that communication in the office.
Did you hear about the company receiving a letter from
No.
lawyers?
Excuse me. Wait for
Sorry.
your questions to be completed before you answer, please.
Mhm.
Is that a yes? Is that a yes?
Yes.
She can't take down ahas or mm-ms, so you have to answer yes or no.
Okay.
Okay? When you knew that Mr. Libas was working more than 6 days in a row and as much as 30 days in a row, did you make an effort to compensate Mr. Libas for overtime?
No, because he was salaried.
Did it occur to you at that time that he should be paid more money because he was working 30 days in a row?
No, because he was salaried.
All right, thank you. Did you make any effort to determine whether paying him his same salary without increasing it when he was working 30 days in a row was appropriate or not?
No, because he was salaried.
Ma'am, I'm just asking if you made any effort to determine whether it was appropriate to pay him the same amount of money.
No.
All right. Did you speak with Howard Bodie and let Mr. Bodie know that Mr. Libas was working 30 days in a row?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Because the expectation was when you are salary, you do what is necessary to take care of the business.
Period.
Yes.
Thank you. And is that still the expectation at this company?
Yes.
Thank you. Are you married?
No.
Do you have any children?
No.
Thank you. Do any of the employees have children?
Yes.
And some of them are married,
Yes.
right? And would you agree that, withdraw. When did you come to understand that the law requires not more than 6 days in a row of consecutive work?
When they were changed to hourly,
When was that, ma'am?
the managers were changed from salaried managers to hourly managers.
When was that, ma'am?
I think his question was when.
Oh, when? That would have been within the last couple of months.
And whose decision was it to do that?
That would have been Howard and Ron's.
Thank you. And when do you think that happened? When you say last couple of months, we're now in October. Do you think that happened in August? July?
September.
September of 2018?
Yes.
All right. And who was the one who indicated to you that the managers were going to be changed to hourly employees?
Human Resources.
Who was that?
Andy Piernet.
And did Miss Piernet tell you, is it Miss Piernet?
Pernat.
Miss Pernat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pirnat.
Okay. Did Miss Piernet tell you that verbally or in writing?
It was verbally to myself.
Did you ever see any writing issued by the company, a memo or an email or an issuance of a employee handbook indicating that the company was changing its policy with regard to how it paid its managers
No.
or assistant managers?
No.
Thank you. Does the company have an employee handbook?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that the purpose of the employee handbook is to put down in writing pertinent policies and procedures that the company wants employees to know?
Yes.
And the purpose of putting these policies and procedures in writing is because the policies and procedures are so important that they need to be documented. True?
True. Correct.
And so not every policy or procedure at the company is put in writing, correct?
Correct.
Just the important ones, right?
The ones that apply to everybody.
Okay, thank you. And would you agree that the policies and procedures in the employee handbook apply to the employees of American Retail Services?
Yes.
And the policies also apply equally to management, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree with me that it's the policy and procedure at the company which is stated in writing or unstated in writing, that employees of the company are to be treated fairly
Correct.
in accordance with the law.
Correct.
They're not to be taken advantage of, right?
Correct.
And likewise, managers or assistant managers aren't to take advantage of management,
Correct.
right? They're not to steal, right? It's
Correct.
against the law and company policy, withdraw. It's against company policies and procedures for employees to take money from the company or from management. True?
Correct.
Would you also agree with me that it's important for management not to take money away from the employees who earn it?
Correct.
Thank you. And would you agree with me that if an employee was stealing money, either out of the till or stealing product, that that would be egregious misconduct,
Correct.
deserving of punishment?
Correct.
Would you then also likely agree with me, or likewise agree with me, that if management was taking money from its employees, and not paying them for their hard work, that that would be deserving of punishment?
Correct.
Thank you. Did you ever have an opportunity or a reason to reprimand Mr. Libas?
There was one time when he was, I don't remember if he was late on his field surveys or they didn't get submitted entirely, but I remember writing him up for that
How many times do you think you did that?
once.
How many years did Mr. Libas work for the company?
Oh, he was many.
How many years, ma'am? What's your best estimate?
Um,
If you don't know exactly.
2005 to 2017, so 12 or 13.
Would you describe him as a hardworking employee?
Yes.
Honest?
Yes.
Diligent?
Yes.
Do you know why he left American Retail Services?
I heard he had an issue with the director of operations, and that was the reason he is no longer employed.
Who is the director of operations?
Cheryl Harden?
Was he terminated to your knowledge?
I don't know.
Did anyone ever tell you that he was terminated?
No.
Did they tell you he quit?
They told me he was no longer with the company.
Did you consider him a friend?
He was a colleague,
Was he a workplace colleague or friend?
workplace colleague.
Okay, not a friend.
No.
Did you have his cell number in your phone?
I did.
When you found out that he was no longer with the company, did you call him to find out why?
No.
Did you contact him for any reason?
No.
Wish him luck or anything like that?
No.
Just slow down a little so we make sure he gets the whole question out.
Okay.
Do you ever withdraw? You would agree with me that if an employee complains about an issue such as not being paid overtime or working too many days in a row, that is a legitimate complaint that an employee should feel free to bring to management, correct?
Yes.
Interpose an objection, calls for speculation, vague.
Did you ever retaliate against Mr. Libas?
No.
Would you agree with me that retaliation is against company policy?
Yes.
So if you did issue a write-up to Mr. Libas because he was complaining about working so many days in a row, you would agree with me that would be against company policy, correct?
Yes.
Have you been reprimanded in any fashion for any ways that you managed your subordinates, including Mr. Libas?
No.
Is it your job, or was it your job as district manager to keep apprised of relevant California employment laws?
No.
Did you receive any training with regard to harassment and discrimination in the workplace?
I had harassment training when I was in Oregon, and then nothing until 2015,
What year was that training in Oregon?
2007 or 8.
Thank you. So, how many employees does ARS have?
Approximately 1,500.
Thank you. And what year was the last year you received training?
For myself,
Yeah.
2015.
Did you receive any training in 2016?
No,
2017?
no,
And you indicated that this was harassment training, correct?
correct,
And so what you learned about was sexual harassment, correct?
correct.
And maybe some related topics of harassment based upon race or national origin or religion?
Correct.
Okay. Do you recall learning, withdraw, do you recall receiving any training or education with regard to wage hour laws?
No,
Thank you. In fact, ma'am, you've never received any training through your employer with regard to wage hour laws in California, correct?
correct.
Did you ever ask to go through some training pertaining to wage hour laws in California so that you could be a better manager?
No,
Did you want to be a better manager?
I did.
Was it important for you to know the laws that govern your employees?
Yes,
Do you know anything about wage hour law in California?
I do now.
When did you learn it, ma'am?
On the internet
When was that?
over the last few months,
Thank
from
you.
like the beginning of the year.
2018?
Yes,
Thank you. And when you say you learned it on the internet, did you do that on your own?
yes.
And what sites or applications on the internet did you use to gain this knowledge of California wage hour law?
The one that I remember is the California Labor Board website.
Do you know what the minimum wage in California is?
When I left
Yes or
my...
no, ma'am? Do you know what the minimum wage in California is?
No,
Thank you. Do you know what the minimum wage is in San Diego County?
no, I don't.
Thank you. Do you know how many hours an employee has to work in a day before they become eligible for overtime?
Yes.
How many?
8.
Do you know how many hours an employee has to work in a week before they become eligible for overtime?
Yes.
How much?
40.
Do you know whether the law pertaining to 8 hours in a day or 40 hours in a week has changed at any point in the last 10 years?
I'm not aware.
Thank you. Are you aware that employees have to be allowed to take a break throughout the day?
Yes.
What is your understanding in that regard?
After they get a 10-minute break for every 4 hours that is worked, and they get a meal period for over 6.
How long is the rest break that they have to be allowed?
30 minutes.
How long is the meal break?
The rest break, I'm sorry, the rest break is 10. The meal is 30.
And is the rest break paid or unpaid?
It's paid.
And is the meal break paid or unpaid?
Unpaid.
Do you have any subordinates, ma'am?
Currently, no.
When you were the district manager for ARS or MyOpC, did you have any subordinates?
Yes.
How many?
It ranged from 8 to 12.
And I think you said you had as many as 17 managers, correct, under you?
17 stores.
Did they all have managers?
Some of them were dual site managers, which one manager oversaw 2 sites.
Okay. So the 12 employees or so, those were direct subordinates, correct?
Correct.
And then you understand that you also were the indirect superior to a number of employees who worked under the store manager.
Correct.
All right. Did you make any effort at any time to educate your managers, your direct subordinates, with regard to wage hour law in California?
Regarding meal breaks and rest periods, yes.
How did you do that?
It would have been through a training session that we had manager meeting.
Who conducted that meeting?
I did.
Where was it?
Our location on Sycamore Avenue, where I held all of my manager meetings,
What part of San Diego is that in?
North County,
What city?
Vista.
Did the company ever issue anything in writing indicating that employees, including managers, were not to work more than 6 days in a row?
No.
Did you have an understanding that your managers were driving their own personal vehicles
Yes.
in the course of their job?
Yes.
And do you drive your vehicle in the course of your job?
Yes.
And do you have an understanding that in California, if an employee uses their vehicle for their job, they are to be reimbursed for mileage?
Objection calls for a legal conclusion.
Yes.
What is your understanding as to the rate they're supposed to be reimbursed?
It is supposed to be the federal rate.
What is that?
The last time I looked, it was like 55 cents a mile.
Did Mr. Libas ever complain that he was using his car without compensation?
No.
At any one point in time, did ARS or MyObC have a policy and practice of deducting $100 from the total mileage expense?
Not that I'm aware of.
At any one point in time, did MyObC or American Retail Services have a policy of paying its managers 20 cents a mile for travel?
Yes.
In what years did this company, this defendant in this case, pay its employees 20 cents per mile?
The entire time I've been employed.
Is that still true to this day?
Yes.
Do you have an understanding that in California, the reimbursable mileage rate is higher than 20 cents per mile?
Based on the federal rate, yes.
Why does the company only pay 20 cents per mile?
Objection calls for speculation.
It would have been the decision of the owners.
Did you ever tell them that was against the law?
No,
Why not?
because that was the policy.
Well, ma'am, you're a manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yes.
that a yes? And as a manager, you understand it's your legal obligation, if not your ethical duty, to ensure that your subordinates are treated legally under the law, correct?
Correct.
Objection argumentative.
I mean, if you had a female subordinate who was getting sexually harassed by the owners, you would probably try to step in and do something about it, right?
Correct.
And if you were being harassed or discriminated against, you would stick up for yourself, right?
Yes.
So when you realized your subordinates were only being paid 20 cents a mile, why didn't you stand up and say, hey, this is too little?
Objection.
The federal rate in California law requires a higher rate.
Because they received a reimbursement.
Sorry, let me object first.
Sorry.
Objection misstates your testimony. Argumentative. Do you need the question back again?
Yes, please.
Can you
I'll have
read
it
it
right
back?
So when you realized your subordinates were only being paid 20 cents a mile, why didn't you stand up and say, hey, this is too little? The federal rate in California law requires a higher rate.
Because they were being reimbursed a specific dollar amount every month for their fuel usage, and I didn't take the time to go through and figure out whether or not it was more than 20 cents a mile.
Why not?
Because I had figured the company had already done that for them.
You have no idea, as you sit here today, whether that $100 that was credited towards the employees for mileage reimbursement was sufficient or not, correct?
Objection argumentative.
No,
And you never made an effort to find out, correct?
correct.
Who determined that employees would receive $100 a month for their gas?
The final decision was Howard and Ron.
How did they come up with $100?
Objection calls for speculation.
I have no idea.
You, probably more than anyone else involved in this case, other than the owners of the company, would know that the price of gas fluctuates, right?
Yes,
Did the $100 fluctuate with the price of gas?
no.
When was the last time withdraw? When did the company begin reimbursing its employees $100 for their gas?
From the beginning of time,
The beginning of your employment in 2006?
no, the beginning of the company.
When was that? 1999?
Yes,
Has it ever been increased?
no.
The
Not
price
that
of-
not that I'm aware of.
The price of gas has probably doubled in the last 19 years. True?
Yes,
Did you ever go to Howard and the owners and say, we need to double the reimbursement?
No.
The $100 reimbursement because the employees are paying more for gas.
no,
Why not, ma'am?
because he wouldn't have done anything anyway.
Why not?
I don't know why Howard would not.
Did you ever ask him?
No,
You're just assuming that.
yes,
Are you assuming that because he's a frugal man?
because many things have been asked for, and
And he doesn't do it.
right.
All right. Let's go through that list of things that have been asked for that he doesn't agree to. What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
401k
Okay? So you've asked him for a 401k, he doesn't do it.
doesn't
right?
do it.
You understand a 401k is not required under the law.
Right.
Okay. What's the next thing you asked for that he didn't do?
Raises for my managers.
And for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yes.
that a yes?
And he doesn't give those out either, correct?
Not very often.
What's the next thing?
Those are the only two things I can think of.
Do you get health care benefits?
Yes.
Are they really good or not so good or
They're not good.
not good? Did you ever ask him for better health care benefits?
No,
Why not?
because that is not something that I'm involved with.
Well, if your deductible is too high or your plan doesn't cover a lot of things, you could ask him for a better plan, right?
It wouldn't happen
Why not?
because it would cost him more money.
Well, these folks are wealthy. You understand that, right?
Oh, I know that.
How many managers like you, in other words, district managers, did they have?
12?
Did you ever speak with them to find out?
No.
Can we take a quick break?
Please?
Sure.
Going off, we're at 10
It's important. Let's
We're
be.
back on the record at 10:53.
All right, ma'am, just have a seat 1 second, okay? You don't even have to put on your microphone because you don't have to speak, okay? Let me tell you just one thing about the law in California, okay? The law protects you from retaliation for everything you say under oath in this deposition. That law applies to what you say in deposition, and it applies to what you say in trial. It is against the law for your employer to take any adverse employment action against you whatsoever for anything you truthfully say in deposition. So you are free to tell me whatever you want to tell me about your employer. And if you're ever retaliated against, or your employer ever takes one step against you, if you're retaliated against by a write-up and they start nitpicking your work, or they threaten you with termination, I want you to feel free to come back and see me. You understand that?
Yes.
Because I'll protect you, okay? Thank you.
Are we off the record?
We're off the record.
10:54. And we're back on the record at 11 a.m.
Is there someone at the company that Mr. Bodie pays particular attention to, or whose opinion carries a lot of weight?
Objection
Yes.
calls for speculation.
Who is that?
Rob King and Cheryl Harden.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what was Rob's last name?
King?
King?
Yes.
What is his title?
He is retail manager.
Okay. Did you ever speak with him about the issue of gas reimbursement?
With Rob?
Yes.
No.
What about with Ms. Harden?
No.
Okay. Why didn't you speak with Mr. King?
Because it's not his department.
Okay. Why didn't you speak with Ms. Harden?
Because the reimbursement was determined by the company.
Well, what's Ms. Harden's position?
Director of Operations.
And she fulfills some human resource roles, true?
In regards to dealing with the employees, yes.
Yes, and setting policies and procedures that apply to employees.
With consultation with Howard.
Okay. So why didn't you bring up with Ms. Harden this issue of the gas reimbursement and whether it could be illegal under California law?
Objection calls for a legal conclusion. Argumentative.
Because the company set the policy, I didn't think it was an issue.
Well, a minute ago, before we broke, you told me the reason you didn't bring it up with Howard Bodie was because it wouldn't do any good. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Did you also feel that way with regard to Ms. Harden?
Yes.
Did you hear from any source, including Mr. Libas, that Mr. Libas worked as many as 90 days in a row without a day off?
No.
You've never heard that from any source?
No.
Are you familiar with the allegations in the lawsuit?
I'm familiar, yes.
Have you read it?
No.
If you haven't read it, how are you familiar with the allegations in the lawsuit?
Andy would have told me that that was one of the things that was being brought up.
All right. And did she tell you that there was an allegation in the lawsuit that employees were made to work many, many, many days in a row?
No.
Okay. Why did you speak with Ms. Piernot about the allegations in the lawsuit?
Because she knew I would be deposed.
When did you and she meet?
August of this year?
And did you meet to discuss your deposition with her?
No.
What was the purpose of the meeting?
Just to tell me about the lawsuit and that I may be deposed.
Okay. Have you spoken with her after her deposition?
Not in regards to the deposition.
Have you spoken with anybody about the deposition here today other than your lawyer?
No.
And you are represented by counsel here today, true?
Yes.
And whose decision was it to have you represented by counsel?
Objection calls for speculation.
I don't know.
Okay.
Also calls for attorney-client privileged information.
Is the store open 24/7?
Objection vague.
Which store?
I'm going to rephrase the question. I'll withdraw it. Are the convenience stores open 7 days a week?
Most of them, yes.
All right. Which ones are not?
The one on San Diego State, Site 250, 712 in Arizona, and then I know there are some in Oregon and Washington that are not open.
All right, but almost all of them are open 7 days a week, correct?
Yes.
And are most of those also open 24 hours a day?
Yes.
How long was Mr. Olivas without an assistant manager?
Under me for about a month.
Are you sure it wasn't longer?
I recall
Objection
it being a month.
argumentative, asked and answered.
I recall it being about a month.
All right. And the duration of how long he was left without an assistant manager would be reflected in payroll records and time records, correct?
Yes.
How much are assistant managers paid per hour?
Objection calls for speculation.
Now?
Now it
Still
would,
calls for
Or
speculation.
when you left, as of the time you left the district manager position?
Objection misstates her testimony. Lacks foundation.
it ranged between $12 and $13 an hour.
How much were the managers paid?
Objection calls for speculation vague as to time.
Like Mr. Olivas, how much was he paid per hour?
Objection misstates her testimony.
45,000 something. I don't know exactly what it was.
Did any other managers, other than Mr. Olivas, complain to you that they had to work more than 6 days in a row?
I had a couple of managers when I was a DM bring that to my attention.
What were their names?
Tony Gonzalez and Lola Kelly.
What store was Tony Gonzalez in?
He ended with Site 209 and 213.
Is he still with the company?
No,
Do you have his number in your cell phone?
not a current one.
Can you give me the one that you do have?
Eight 395-2805.
All right, would you show it to the court reporter? And what number do you have for Lola Kelly?
559-905-2644.
All right, thank you. And is Miss Kelly still employed with the company?
No,
When did she leave?
in May of 2018,
What store was she in?
208 and 212.
What was her last store? Or was she managing two stores?
Two stores.
How many hours was a manager such as Mr. Olivas supposed to work in a week
45 to 50,
with no overtime, correct?
correct.
How many hours do you work a week?
When I was a district manager,
Yeah.
75 to 100.
Oh, my. How much did you get paid a year?
You will laugh.
I won't. I
Objection.
promise you I won't laugh.
65,000.
Any overtime with that?
No,
I'm sorry.
Do you want another break?
no,
Did you ever ask for a raise?
no.
If you were to ask for a raise, who would you ask?
After Cheryl was put into place, it would have been her.
Why didn't you ask her for a raise?
It wouldn't do any good
How do you know that?
because when she made changes and took me out of overseeing the other district manager, she made the comment that, well, you're lucky I didn't take away any money from you.
She said that to you?
Yes.
And when she said that to you, when she made that threat to you, did you feel like you could report that to Mr. Bodie?
Objection. Argumentative.
No,
Why not?
it wouldn't have done any good anyway.
Why do you say that?
Because Cheryl is one that he considers very, very important and somebody that he relies upon.
Did Ms. Harden make any other threats to you over the course of your employment?
No,
Did she say anything to you that indicated that you were to threaten any of your subordinates, such as if they don't like it, then they can take a hike, or then we'll get rid of them, or anything like that?
no,
Did she ever make any disparaging comments about any of the managers?
only if it was regarding the work that they were doing.
What did she say in that regard?
Like with Daniel, he needed to step up and do a better job.
Prior to Ms. Harden becoming employed with American Retail Services, did you ever ask Mr. Bodie for a raise?
No,
What year did you begin earning $65,000 a year?
2015.
Okay, and you received a raise at that point what were you making before that?
59,000.
But no raise since 2015?
No.
Do you receive any bonuses?
Yes, recently they implemented a bonus program.
How much did you receive?
There have been 3 bonuses. One was about 3,000, one was about 2,000, and the last one was about 1,000.
Okay. Taxable?
Yes.
You would agree with me that managers such as Mr. Libas routinely worked more than 30 hours per week, correct?
Yes.
Isn't it true that Mr. Olivas Isn't it true that you told Mr. Olivas that he couldn't take a day off because his store is 24/7?
No.
Did you say anything similar to that, or words to that effect?
There was a discussion, I remember this, about him not taking phone calls at night and relying on his assistant.
Okay.
And I told him that he was responsible for the store and he should be taking the calls, not the assistant,
Okay.
because he was the salaried employee
Okay.
and in charge.
Okay. When was it that American Retail Services, or MyObC, changed its policy to prohibit working 7 days in a row?
Objection. Calls for speculation. Lacks foundation. Assumes facts.
Last year, or 2017 or 2016. Don't remember the exact.
Okay, and how is it that you learned of the change in that policy?
Cheryl would discuss that with the district managers.
All right, and again, that discussion was verbal. There was nothing put in writing in that regard?
Correct.
Do you remember an in-person meeting when this change was discussed, or was it over the phone?
I believe it was a conference call.
Okay. Do you remember what anyone said on the call other than Ms. Harden?
No.
Were the 12 other district managers also on the call?
Yes.
Do you recall any of them saying something like, well, what about us?
No.
Or anything like that?
No.
Do you work more than 7 days in a row?
Not currently with my new position, but previously, yes.
Let's talk about 2000. And you've been in your new position for how long?
Since June of this year.
All right, recently. So let's talk about the first half of 2018. Did you work more than 6 days in a row?
Yes.
Did you work more than 10 days in a row?
Yes.
Did you work more than 20 days in a row?
Yes.
Do you think you worked as many as 30 days in a row?
Yes.
Would you be able to count on one or two hands the number of days off that you took in 2018?
Maybe on one,
Really? Okay.
but I did have a vacation in February.
How many days?
10
Where'd you go?
on a cruise.
Good for you. In 2017, did you work more than 6 days in a row?
Yes.
Do you think you worked more than 10 days in a row?
Several times, yes.
Okay. Do you think you worked more than 30 days in a row in 2017?
No.
2016, did you routinely work more than 6 days in a row?
Yes.
More than 10 days in a row?
Sometimes, yes.
Same would be true for 2015?
Yes.
Same would be true
Yes.
for 2014
Yes.
and 2013?
Yes.
I think you indicated earlier that there were two spans of time in which Mr. Libas did not have an assistant manager. Do you recall that?
I recall the one.
Was it just one time?
I believe it was one while he was under me.
Was there another time when he was not under you?
Objection calls for speculation.
Do you mean when he was in the other district?
At any time, ma'am.
I'm not aware of the situation in the other district.
So your recollection is that he was only without an assistant manager for 1 month?
Yes, while he was under me.
Okay. I think you indicated that there were manager meetings. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And they were up in Vista at Sycamore? On
many
Sycamore?
of them, yes.
All right. Is that mostly where they were held?
Yes,
And who would attend those?
the managers and sometimes assistants.
Okay. Managers such as Mr. Libas
Yes,
for the, how many stores?
it would have been 13 to 15.
Okay. And were the managers paid for their time attending the manager meetings?
Yes,
How were they paid?
it was just a continuation of their day.
So they were paid by virtue of their receiving a salary.
Yes,
They weren't paid anything extra, correct?
no.
When were those manager meetings typically held?
In the afternoon, well, from about 11 until 1, mid-afternoon,
Weekdays or weekends?
weekdays.
Were there ever any weekend meetings?
No,
Do you recall a point in time when Mr. Libas had surgery?
I do.
How many years ago was that?
Oh my goodness, 2013 or 14.
Do you know what the surgery was for?
I don't recall what it was. I just remember him having a surgery.
And do you remember as a result of having the surgery, he had to take some time off?
Yes.
What is your recollection with regard to how many days he needed off?
I believe it was a week.
Do you recall indicating to him that it was time for him to go back to work?
Did I indicate?
Yeah.
No.
How is it that you were notified that he would return to work?
He called me to let me know that his doctor released him.
Were you ever pressured by any of your superiors to get Mr. Olivas back to work from his medical leave
For the surgery?
after the surgery?
No.
Was attendance at the manager meetings mandatory?
If the manager was not on vacation or out for a medical?
Do you recall discussing whether Mr. Olivas should attend a manager meeting while he was out on medical?
Not until he showed up for the meeting.
Were you surprised he showed up?
Yes. And so were several other managers.
Was he bandaged?
I don't know. He had clothes on.
Was he disabled in any way?
I remember him
Objection calls for a legal conclusion.
I remember him walking slower.
Was he walking gingerly?
Yes.
Do you deny telling him that he had to attend that manager's meeting?
Can you phrase that?
Sure. Did you tell him that he had to attend that manager's meeting?
No.
Do you recall Mr. Olivas getting suspended in February of 2008?
No. That would have been prior to me coming to San Diego.
Okay. Was he, I may have misspoke. I misspoke. Withdraw the question. Was Mr. Libas suspended in February of 2018?
I was told that he was.
Who told you that?
Objection could call for attorney-client privileged information to the extent you can answer.
Don't want to know about it if it
Otherwise,
came from your lawyer,
yeah.
but if it came from Hardin or came from somebody at work or a coworker or anyone else other than lawyers, I'm entitled to hear it.
I believe it was Cheryl, but I can't say that 100%.
Okay. Do you know why he was suspended?
I know there was a discussion between him and Cheryl because she did tell me about that.
What did she say in that regard?
She said that he walked away from her and acted like he didn't want to hear what she had to say. And she told him to come back and they needed to finish the discussion. And he kept walking away. And then she told me he was suspended.
And was she the one who suspended him?
Yes.
Had you ever seen her speak to any other employees in an unprofessional tone?
Yes.
And what about the tone was unprofessional? Was she loud, yelling, rude?
Rude. She's very condescending.
Is she dismissive of employees?
She can be, yes.
Was she ever rude to you?
On occasion, yes.
Was she condescending to you?
Yes.
Is she the type of manager who doesn't pay attention to her employees' complaints?
I don't know if she doesn't pay attention, or if she doesn't really care.
Do you know how it was determined that employees got 20 cents a mile for their mileage reimbursement?
I do not.
You just know it was set by Howard.
Yes.
And it was set by Howard. Howard was the one who told you that was the policy, correct?
Yes.
And it's never changed in all those years,
Correct.
Is it true that the employee meetings withdraw? Is it true that managers are to have employee meetings at least every other month with their employees?
Yes.
And how often are those manager meetings we spoke about up on Sycamore?
That I would have?
Yeah.
Monthly.
Did you ever prepare an agenda for a manager's meeting?
Always.
Was that your practice to prepare one?
Yes.
And would you pass it out to your subordinates before the meeting?
I did not pass it out. It was more like notes for myself.
Okay. And where would you prepare that document?
Sitting either in an office at a store or at my house.
And would you have a printer available to print it out?
Yes.
Where would you typically print it out?
After finishing preparing it, then I would print it.
And would you print it at one of the stores or at your house?
Either, depending on where I created the document.
Did you use a particular document as a template so that you just had to go in and edit the agenda for the next meeting?
No.
Would you start from scratch every single time?
Yes.
Take a look at Exhibit 1 to your deposition. Did you prepare this document?
No.
Do you know who prepared this document?
No.
Have you ever seen this document before?
No.
At the top it says Porters of American Retail Services. Do you see that?
Yes.
What is a porter?
Porters is what Howard has determined that the convenience store part of the business will be called.
So you've never seen this before and it doesn't ring any bells with you?
No.
Okay. Were you a district manager on October 26, 2017?
I was for ARS West. If I had to guess, this was written by whoever was the DM at that time for
And who do
that
you-
district.
Who do you think that was?
Ron Barnes?
Okay, so you're thinking this was written by Ron Barnes?
Yes.
Do the policies on this document look familiar?
Some of them, yes.
You'll see on the you'll see on the last page, the second entry from the top says working off the clock to avoid overtime. You see that?
Yes.
Was that a problem at ARS, that there were employees who worked off the clock to avoid overtime?
In my district, no.
In other districts?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm not aware.
Did you ever hear that that was happening?
No.
Are you aware of it ever happening in your district?
No.
Did any managers ever tell you that employees wanted to work off the clock to avoid overtime?
Yes.
Why would they want to do that?
So they could finish their duties or assignments that they were given for the day.
If you look about halfway down the front page, under the underlined section, it says part-time employees working full-time, part-time employee working more than 29 hours without being offered health benefits coverage. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you remember a problem at ARS where employees were working more than 29 hours and they were not being offered health care benefits?
I do.
And what did the company do about that?
Part-time employees were supposed to be at 29 or less, which became our policy. And if a manager allowed it with their knowledge, then documentation was done.
You mean a write-up?
Yes.
The next bullet point down says, look on People Matter every week. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you know what that refers to?
People Matter is the system that we use for gaining applications for employment. It's an internet-based.
Okay. What is your home address?
2000 Montego Avenue, apartment 218, Escondido, 92026,
Okay, what's your cell phone number?
619-490-9961.
Did Ms. Harden ever discuss with you that last incident with Mr. Libas?
Other than just giving me the details that we discussed previously, that was it.
So I think what she told you was that Mr. Libas and she got into a discussion.
Yes.
What was that discussion about?
I don't recall.
Was it about the number of days he was working in a row or overtime, or do you remember what it was about?
No.
But she told you that Mr. Libas walked away from her,
Yes.
right? And she said, come back. And he continued to walk away.
Yes.
And that she suspended him.
Yes.
Do you recall anything else?
That's,
Did she tell you that she pointed her finger at him?
she did not.
Did anyone?
I believe, yes. Rami, the district manager, that was the first day that he went to meet Al. And that was...
Was he there?
Yes, when it happened.
Okay. And did he tell you that Ms. Harden, in that meeting, pointed her finger at Mr. Libas?
Yes.
And then said, you get back here, and then pointed her finger to the ground as if you would, like you would do to a dog?
Yes. And I remember him saying something about her taking his keys and suspending him.
And to your knowledge, she had the authority to do that.
Yes.
Had she ever done that to any other employees, to your knowledge?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did you have you had any discussions with Ms. Harden about the claims in this lawsuit?
No.
Did she ever ask you whether you made Mr. Libas work more than 6 days in a row?
No.
Do you recall hearing about this altercation between Harden and Mr. Libas after September of 2017?
Objection misstates her testimony.
I know it's hard to remember, but
Yes, because it happened in February. I believe.
thank you. So you understand that that altercation was after Mr. Libas's lawyers sent a letter to the company indicating that there were a number of wage hour violations being brought against the company on behalf of Mr. Libas and others, correct?
Until today, I was not aware that a letter was sent.
Okay. Was the altercation with Mr. Libas after the company had changed some of its policies or before?
Objection misstates her testimony.
Policies in terms of,
Forcing employees to work more than 6 days in a row.
Objection argumentative, calls for speculation, lacks foundation, misstates her testimony.
it would have been after.
I don't have any further questions for you. Do you have any questions, Council?
I do not.
All right, why don't we, and I'll tell you, I've been at this location for 20 years, either in that building or in this new one. I'm an easy guy to find. I've got a unique name and I'm an easy guy to find. We'll have the transcript prepared and sent to counsel, who will make it available to the witness, who will have 30 days to read and review the transcript and to make any changes to it that she feels are appropriate. I ask that I'm then notified of those changes within that 30-day period. Counsel may maintain custody and control of that transcript and lodge it with the trial court judge on the day of trial. I would like a copy of that original document made available for the courtroom. So stipulated?
And if anything happens to the original, we can use a certified copy.
Great, yes.
So
thank you.
stipulated.
Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Listen,